Hi, my name is Chad Eversole, and this is Cajon Construction. I've been working on this for the last couple of weeks, I would say, here at my home in Mason. One of the things that drew me to making a cajon is actually the history on it. In the 16th century, it was actually made by African slaves in Peru because they weren't allowed having any musical instruments of any kind because they thought that would cause revolts and whatnot. So instead of musical instruments, they would use crates from shipping containers or old dresser drawers and actually make these instruments their own way, and so they could still play instruments and still have a part of their own culture. So I thought that was actually really cool. And in 2001, I believe it was, Peru actually named it part of its national heritage. And so I thought that was actually a really cool factor that Peru just did that. This is my cajon. Some interesting facts about the cajon are, in Spanish, the word cajon actually means box or dresser drawer. That's clearly, you can see the shape is definitely a box. The front side of the cajon is definitely the drum surface. And so you hit that side. It's called a tapa, actually. And there's many different types of cajons. The traditional ones did not have snare pieces in them, but this one does. That creates more resonance. Other interesting fact is that the backside has a hole, and you can actually play this side too, but it doesn't create as much sound. This creates the resonance and creates the sound of the cajon. And lastly on it, there's feet to give the whole cajon a little more sound, to get it off the floor so it can vibrate more. I like that. What also interests me about the cajon is actually the sound of it. Here I made a modern cajon, which has a snare piece in it. This piece started getting added around the late 17th century to 18th century, when the instrument actually got added to the flamenco by a band. This band originally added a guitar string to the inside of the tapa here to give it that snare sound, and that kind of pushed it into a bunch of different genres. Now you can actually hear the cajon sound in a lot of different musical arrangements, blues, folk music, all those different types of things. So I find that very interesting. Up top, you get the higher register of the cajon. And you're supposed to play it, I play it open-handed, and then you just pat on it, essentially. And that gives you that sound. And then deep, kind of towards the center here, you palm it, essentially, to get more of a bass sound. And so you can start getting different sounds to that, different combinations. And so I just love the sound of it. You can also play a little bit on the back. And that gives you kind of a different sound. And so altogether, it's a pretty cool instrument, and here's how I made mine. To build my cajon, I used a Meinl drum making kit, which came with several pieces to help you build your cajon. It came with a drum surface, which is the front side. Came with the back side that has the hole. Came with the snare pieces and the snare attachment piece. The four wood pieces to attach the front side of the drum to. The rubber foot stops and multiple screws. And finally, it came with the top, bottom, and side pieces of your cajon. In addition to those items, you'll also need some of your own. You'll need a carpenter square to make sure everything comes out 90 degrees. You'll need a wood clamp to make sure the wood glue sets correctly. Some sandpaper to sand down some edges. A drill. Countersink, which I will explain later. And some wood glue. First step in building a cajon is putting the bottom, sides, and top together using your wood glue.
During this process, you're going to want to have a paper towel or something on hand to wipe away the excess glue, and also a hammer so you can hit the joints completely together so the box comes out completely square.
To test how the right angles with this, you use the carpenter square and make sure that it is flush against both of these, both sides, to make sure that it's a 90-degree angle, which means that the front and back will be able to screw onto this square. You won't have any issues with that, so you're looking for that. Once you have that complete, you need to add a good amount of weight to the top. Here I'm using physics books because, let's be honest here, they're generally very heavy, and this is supposed to sit for a couple hours. We're just going to let it sit overnight.
Once it is dried overnight, it is time to add the front boards using wood glue and clamps. Let those sit for a couple hours till completely dried. It is also important to wipe away all the excess wood glue yet again. While that is drying, you have time to attach the snare piece to the triangular piece that attaches to the inside of the cajon. Once you have put wood glue on both sides of the triangular piece, you can put the snare on the inside of the cajon and hold it down with some wood clamps and just let all that dry for a couple of hours. Now we sanded the back of the cajon so the back piece fit on flat. You attach the back piece with a good amount of wood glue and a lot of weight. While the back dries, it is time to drill the holes for the front. With the countersink, you use it on the holes on the front side to make divots so the screw heads will fit flat with the drum surface. Finally, it's time to attach the drum surface to the cajon with the 15 screws. We used a book to make sure our surface didn't move while drilling. Once that is done, it is time to sand and stain. After you add the feet to the cajon and stain the whole thing, this is what your final product will look like.
I'm extremely happy that I undertook this project, essentially, because one, I have a cajon now, and I find that pretty cool, just to have my own. And also, I really enjoy the cajon's cultural significance that I learned throughout this project, and how much it meant to so many people, and that now I essentially have a small part of that history, and I just love the sound of the drum. Moving on, some thank yous that I want to say. I got most of my research information from www.thecajondrumshop.com on their history page of the drum, and I find that really cool, and that really helped me out a lot. And finally, I want to say thank you to my dad, who was my main cameraman throughout this whole process. And also he lent me tools and whatnot and helped me build the entire thing. So that was extremely helpful. So I hope you guys really enjoyed the video and hope you have a good rest of the semester.